Good morning to one and all present here. I welcome you all for the webinar on putting informality at the center of city resilience. Cities across India have been experiencing a rise in urban poor living in informal settlements. Most people living in the informal settlements face multiple vulnerabilities due to inadequate access to basic services such as housing, roads, water, sanitation, and frequent climatic events, and many more. These vulnerabilities worsen for people living in settlements located in areas that are more prone to natural hazards, such as slopes, river banks, or near industries and dump sites. City resilience is viewed as a step forward for protecting the urban poor from these challenges, along with improving the lives of the next generation of the urban inhabitants. However, to make cities resilient, it is important to acknowledge the needs of those in the most vulnerable situations by integrating informality. The concept of and ideology of informality has taken a spot back in the agenda of urban planning, where various policies and initiatives are being pursued to manage informality. The question that arises is how can government measures address the needs of informal settlements, which are at the core of the climatic resilience? It is becoming increasingly clear that giving voice to the people living in the informal settlements in relation to urban development and planning can contribute towards building collective, sustainable, and inclusive resilience. To have deeper discussions about the role of higher education institutions in synergizing urban planning and development for building climate and community resilience, as well as ways in which the values of equity and social justice influence and shape climatic strategies. Manipal University, Jaipur, Participatory Research in Asia, BReUCom, and Building Resilient Urban Communities have initiated this webinar on putting informality at the center of city resilience. It's my pleasure to introduce the experts. I welcome Professor Chetan Vaidya, who is a former director of School of Planning and Architecture, New Delhi. And he's in 2015, IIT Kharagpur recognized him as distinguished alumni. He was also the director of National Institute of Urban Affairs during 2008 till 2012. I welcome you, sir. Barsha Poricha, Technical Head Cure. She is an urban and regional planner from SEPT Ahmedabad with a PhD in human ecology from Ambedkar University, Delhi. Over the last 2 decades, she has been working on the issues of civil society engagement and human development, and her work particularly has been around engaging, developing, and designing inclusive and participatory planning and development mechanisms within governance processes. I welcome you, Barsha-ji. And the third expert is Dr. Manish Sharma. He's an architect planner from MNIT and IIT Roorkee. And he has recently completed his doctoral study on urban water resilience as his research area. He is recipient of 2 international scholarships during his master's and doctoral study. I welcome you, Manish. He is assistant professor in Manipal University, Jaipur. So I welcome all the experts and the participants for this webinar. And I think Barsha will take over from me.
Madhuraji, Barsha has not been able to join in, so she is trying to join. Let's start with then Dr.
Okay, we'll start with the session. The first question will be for all the panelists. And the question is, what kind of resilience is expected for the type of informality that exists in Indian cities? Over to Chetan Vaidya.
You're not taking both questions together. You're going to take it separately.
Okay, I will take, yeah. And the second question is, how much global environmental issues like climate change contributes to this factor?
Thank you, Manipal University, Jaipur, and Priya and BReU for this opportunity. I think we are dealing with three very complex issues. We are dealing with informal sector, we are dealing with higher education, and we are dealing with resilience. All three are connected and very complex. Sometimes the higher education should guide professional practice, and sometimes professional practice should guide higher education agenda. But unfortunately, in India, it's a professional practice which guides higher education. It's not the other way around. Urban planning as a whole, I'm looking at a global thing and then go down to your specific questions, Madhuraji. Urban planning has to be sustainable and inclusive. So inclusive is the part which more or less deals with informal sector. Not that all informal sector is poor or otherwise, but mostly informal sector we talk about inclusive. And unfortunately, when we are dealing with planning, we don't have those tools with which we can deal with informal sector. You talked about residence. Even when it comes to residence, we take our 4 standard national guidelines. One is urban and regional planning formulation guidelines. Second is GIS-based master planning. Third is local area plan. And fourth is model building law. All of them, if you look at, neither it clearly addresses informal sector nor resilience. And this is something which we need to bring in all the 4 guidelines, as we need it to be based on data and experience, not on intuition. The second thing should be informal sector, all and said, then should be commercially viable. It pays a lot of money, but may not be known in the official circles. So that is the second point. Third is, along with this, we need empowerment and strong local governments. If you want to bring resilience and informal sector into mainstream, you need to have strong local government. Again, I'll refer to Kerala example, where the local governments are very strong and very empowered. And today happens to be Onam, so happy Onam to everybody. On today, when we mention Kerala, we must mention Onam. Unfortunately, we don't consider informal sector as a reliable. I think it's time we should start looking at slums as not an eyesore, but a solution for affordable housing, a solution for rental housing. This is something we'll have to change in our mindset. You know, even today, if you look at ease of living index in our smart city index, with smart city, which gives this, it doesn't look at poor specifically, doesn't look at informal sector specifically. So all the indexes have to be linked to the informal sector or the poor issues, and can we look at, if we have slums which has adequate water, adequate sanitation, adequate ventilation, are they not safe enough for providing affordable housing? Can we change our mindset of this 20 square meter pakka housing? I think that needs to be changed. As far as solution is concerned, I am looking at 2 things. I think we need to spend more time and more investment in our research. Somehow we are not spending enough time and enough investment everywhere to jump and write articles, give solutions. Now look at this whole COVID-19 situation. The health people took a lot of time, lot of money to make vaccine available. And even today, they say vaccine is available only for emergency. They don't say it's a solution for your problem. And they say it's only solution for 60% or 70%. Cannot we have this kind of approach where the pilots which we are doing, can we do these pilots with more investment, more documentation, more database, more sharing, and then bring it into our mainstreaming into planning tools? This is something which required as a solution, both in terms of time and investment in research. The second thing, I'm giving an example. Don't think that this is the solution, but I think if you're dealing with higher education institutes, finally higher education institutes are guided by the model curriculum provided by either All India Council of Technical Education or by Council of Architecture or by in case of planning, Institute of Town Planning. They all have some or other kind of model curriculum. If we can include these kind of ideas into the model curriculum, then it will be helpful. And I'll just give an example. I pushed and pushed and put possibility of including a participatory and integrated urban development approach in the model curriculum for Master of Planning from AICT. Use all kinds of my offices, including when I was a friend, and they included this as an elective, not as a formal subject, as elective. So how could we influence the various professionals, various committees to include informal sector and resilience into our educational institute through our model curriculum, and then it becomes a part of the model curriculum. So these are my suggestions, and if there is anything more, I can get back to in question answer section. Thank you so much, Dr. Madhura.
Yeah, thank you, sir, for your insights for including informality in higher education and the agendas of government also. Now, can Dr. Barsha can address the first question, or should I read it again? Dr. Barsha? You are mute, you are mute.
I was just able to join in through my phone, so if you can just, there was a technical glitch.
Okay, no issue. So can I read the question again for you?
Yes, please.
Yeah. How can urban informality be included in the resilience planning of cities for cities? And how can the partnership among informal urban communities, local governance, and other stakeholders enhance resilience?
Okay, so thank you so much, and I hope, and I'm sorry for having joined late again. So good morning and a very warm welcome. Dr. Madhura, with your permission, can I also share a little bit about BReUCom and then respond to your question?
Sure, sure.
Yeah, okay. So thank you again. And my name is Barsha Puricha, and I actually, I am engaged with a NGO called Center for Urban and Regional Excellence. And we've been working with informality, informal settlements, and looking at urban management and governance issues for a long time. And here, as I am here as part of the Building Resilient Urban Communities Partnership, which is an international partnership to actually shape what I heard Chetanji just sharing right now. How do you actually strengthen education and curriculum of urban schools, urban departments, and how do you strengthen them? And that is where actually BReUCom comes in. And the idea of BReUCom, actually, they've been working, this particular Erasmus EU partnership has been working for a long time now, I think 5 years, under various avatars. And this particular avatar is around enhancing and strengthening curriculum education in architecture and planning schools to talk about resilience. So having said that, there are about 7 partners in this particular program. There are European partners and Indian partners. And in Indian partners, there are 4 educational institutions. There is SPA Bhopal, SPA Vijayawada, NIT Hamirpur, and KRVIA, which is an architecture institute based in Mumbai. And along with it, and because, as I think Dr. Madhura and Chetanji have already said, the idea is to strengthen urban resilience, and one of the significant aspects around this is to understand informality. So to just be able to bridge that gap, there are 2 non-formal and non-profit organizations called Spark and Cure, which are also a partner of this entire process. So here, to address Madhuraji's question as to the importance of informality and the significance of this particular aspect, I think it is very critical, and without, I think, repeating what Chetanji must have already said, is that with the kind of developing nation that we are and the kind of urbanization processes that we are going through, unless we start understanding, recognizing, mapping the entire informality which exists in economy, in social, in social terms, in demographic terms, in spatial terms, we will not be able to address or respond to the questions of urban resilience. And with that as a background, I think I personally, in my professional capacity, have been working on this issue for the last about 2 decades. And the moment you actually start engaging with informal settlements, informal communities, and particularly slums, if we were to use the word, and trying to put them at the center of city planning, I think things change for the better. There is a transformation which happens. There is this conversation which happens. And as Cure, I think we've been working in about 7, 8 states and in smaller cities. And wherever we've been able to make that kind of a bridge between the urban local bodies, city planning issues, and citizen engagement, I think things have worked much. It has been able to address some of these issues of city resilience, and particularly on water resilience. I'm not going to get into that particular aspect because that's going to take some time, and I'm happy to respond to questions later on. But having said that, at BReUCom, I think there were 2 particular specific case studies that were done in the last 1 year, and to aid the understanding of resilience and strengthening this, and coming down to addressing your question, Madhuraji, is how do you start? So NIT, Hamirpur studied Kulu, and Mumbai KRVIA studied a very small, very large but small spatial settlement called Gazdar Band in Mumbai. And both of these studies brought out very critical insights which the students of architecture and planning were able to understand. And without going into the details, as we understand, Kulu is a historical, it's a tourist place, and there is a lot of vernacular architecture over there. But the moment that this was not understood and the city planning was not able to recognize the importance of the geographical location of this particular place, and haphazard planning over the last few decades has happened because of extensive tourism. And we know the kind of climatic and other impacts that these particular regions have faced. So I will not delve into it. I think we have an excellent group of panelists, and Rajesh Bhai is going to take us through a lot of those critical questions. But I just want to flag some of these issues for a conversation later on. So that is the reason why we need to appreciate and understand informality if we have to understand city resilience in any form. The second case study is also very interesting. It's about Gazdar Band. Gazdar Band, Band because the name signifies it. It's near an estuary in Mumbai. And so it is in a very fragile ecosystem. But these people have been living there for a long time. And without getting into the entire understanding as to why this has come up, there is a lot of livelihood, lives which are there, and people are actually interacting and interfacing with Mumbai as a city life extensively over there. But what did the study tell us? The studies actually proposed new research methodologies for students of architecture and planning to understand these particular areas, because in the development plans of Mumbai, Gazdar Band and maybe similar places like that are actually invisible in that entire planning process. So the question that KRVIA raised is that how do you actually start recognizing? And one of the critical tools that comes up is mapping and appreciating these particular settlements, because they are an integral part of the city, and they need to be included if we have to speak on anything like city resilience. So I'm sorry I was late, but I'll stop over there and happy to take on any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Barsha, for your insights on, like, with the case studies of Mumbai and Kulu also, and about new research methodologies. Now, I will call Dr. Manish to opine on these 2 questions.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Firstly, thank you for giving me an opportunity to be a part of this panel. I have just completed my PhD studies and have been working closely on urban resilience topic. And typically, while working on urban resilience for water-based sector, I realized that majority of the issues have been coming up while addressing this urban water sector for provisions for informal sectors, right? Slums and the places where usually low economic societal segments resides. Regarding the first question which have been put up, resilience to what, and vulnerabilities of informal settlements, informal sectors to what? I would like to put up that there are many sectors in which resilience as a theory is persistent. But for this particular part, I have just picked up two as the major areas of finding an intervention, where one is climate change adaptation and one is disaster risk resilience. Climate change adaptations as a chronic disturbances, which would have a greater implication in terms of food securities, in terms of water availability, because that all has its root cause from climate change because of erratic rainfall patterns and everything which we are facing currently and which is the need of the hour. And then we have got disaster risk resilience, which owing to as Chetan sir has already mentioned, that people occupying the most marginal areas in the urban areas, owing to their limited financial capabilities, and then putting up their houses, their residences, and their limited financial and other resources at risk of being wiped off through some disasters or some heat waves or chronic disturbances that increases the vulnerability. But there are two aspects. Yes, vulnerability owing to the geographical locations of a place cannot be altered, but yes, the communities can be made resilient, right? Just for example, Japan may be vulnerable to earthquakes, right? Owing to its geographical location, but they have increased the resilience of their societies, their communities, by implementing certain strategies like innovating structural techniques, making mock drills, capacity building of the communities. They have all increased the resilience levels, and in at the end, it helps to achieve the basic goal of resilience theory, that a community, though facing disturbances, being impacted from, but they can rise back again and can also run up their essential functions. So that's one thing pertaining to that. Moreover, as Barsha ma'am has mentioned, that mapping of informality is the very base of proposing any kind of interventions where one can make changes to and contribute to in inculcating resilience in informal manners. So mapping, while going through the studies, we had seen that yes, it's one particular area where most of the developing countries are lacking. We do not have the data, we do not have the numbers that actually what's the ground reality is. Just in wake of the limited financial capacities of our utilities, just for example, in the water sector as well, though by numbers we say that we are having a water supplying capacity of 135 LPCD for urban residents, but whether it's being actually catered to, or how many populations are actually receiving that amount, and which sectors of the society are critically left out from that. And we all agree on to that fact that informal settlements are the one which are at the receiving end of this. So that's particular key areas which has not been documented clearly, and the numbers are way lacking over here, which we must be mapped up, and then we can just propose an certain proposals for that as well. Then as suggestions come up, just continuing from Chetan sir and Barsha ma'am, yes, we do agree that we need to have a very robust community engagement and its representation also. I would like to add this word representation, so that the communities, the societies, the welfare boards which have been made up, they must have an adequate representation on the political front as well, so that their voices, their concerns are being heard and taken care of. Then local governance, as Chetan sir has already mentioned, that yes, it's a very important key part in including informality at the center of urban resilience. But yes, it's coordination with the development authorities as well for the urban planners, and for planning up a very efficient urban world is also very much necessary. We have seen certain papers in which the discord between the urban local bodies and the development authorities, their response to the citizens, their response to the governments, and their roles and responsibilities, though overlapping and sometimes discrete, they have created problems. That's one thing which needs to be addressed up. Moreover, capacity building of the societies, capacity buildings of the individuals, typically for informal sectors, is one thing which can always improve upon, and which can be seen as a very important solution, keeping in mind again the limited financial resources which individuals do have in informal sectors. On a collaborative scale of a community, they can pretty much strengthen and act against the vulnerabilities which are lurking their particular environment. Just for example, individual rainwater harvesting systems for houses in informal settlement would be pretty much hard. But yes, on a community scale, that can be implemented, and the financial implications distributed. So people in the surveys which have been conducted in the past, people have shown the willingness to do so. Moreover, at the end, I would also like to add up that being a developing country, and with the conditions of the urban service utilities in pretty much stringent for financial basis, we are not able to cover up the urban service provisions for each and every areas. So we must find a way out to look beyond the networks, to look beyond the centralized services, and find a way to provide urban services in decentralized manner. Because I believe that till our utilities are made so much robust that they can just perform on a very homogeneous scale on this urban planning network, till then we must have identification of some certain decentralized ways in which we can cater to small pockets and provide a better urban living for the informal sectors. So I would like to conclude with this, that yes, I do agree with sir and ma'am, and there are certain sectors which needs to be strengthened, and typically for that, community engagement, capacity buildings, and looking beyond networks for decentralization is the main focus, should be the main focus.
Thank you, Manish,
Yeah.
for your insights on urban water resilience as your interest area in informal settlements, and other issues of like climate change adoption and disaster resilience. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Next question is to Chetan Vaidya sir. Sir, how can the partnerships among informal urban communities, local governance, and other stakeholders enhance resilience? Over to Chetan Vaidya sir.
I think it's a very, very relevant and interesting question. Unfortunately, there's a lot of mistrust of communities on the local government, and the mistrust of local governments on the communities. This is both sides. And this is something which needs to be, there are many people, I'm sure there are many in this group also, who would say that it should be a bottom-up approach. You leave it to communities, and communities will decide, and they know and they will be able to take up what is for them. I really do not agree with that approach. What you need is in a both-sided. It should be bottom-up. It should be also from local government to communities. There should be options provided in the system where communities could participate. not only just participate, but also decide what they want to do, what are the budgets, also opportunities for them to, I mean, there are examples where Indore said, if you're willing to pay 1/3 the road in your colony, we will spend 2/3, and the response was excellent. And these are the kind of things which are happening all over the country. There's many examples of this kind of policy where you open up opportunities. But then why only road? It could be anything. Let the community decide and willing to pay a part of the expenditure, and the rest could be from the local government or state government. But it is not just, it's not just that you let them take participate. I call this participation chai samosa meetings. You know, for many projects we invite, particularly it's an international project, we invite community leaders to tell, or NGOs to tell what they want to do, and it becomes a chai samosa meeting. I'm not talking about that. Actual participation in terms of money, in terms of functions, in terms of technical input. And that also requires strengthening of communities. I mean, they also need support in terms of technical issues and budgets and other things. So it's a two-way process, and that is how, and we both have to believe in it. I think that's the most important thing. I mean, this starting cannot be a mistake. The starting has to be believing in each other and making a way forward. There are many examples all over. Bangalore has been doing it there. I can tell you 4 to 5 examples. What is important is to go ahead and experiment, document, and try to upscale it. And in our urban context, we now no more use the pilots, because we are told that pilots normally fail. We use the word for a lighthouse project. So can we take some lighthouse projects of community and local government partnership and take it, upscale it at ward, zone, and city level? That is my inputs, Madhuraji. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for giving us your insights on both the approaches, like bottom-up approach and top-down approach also, and involving communities in all the 3 things like money, function, and technical inputs. Can I know the views of Dr. Barsha on the question of what are the critical challenges to the resilience planning processes in Indian cities? Barsha ji.
Yeah. So resilience planning processes, and to just add to what Chetanji has already said, that there are, I will speak from a civil society perspective because that's where I draw most of my understanding and information from. So one of the things that is very, very critical is to invest in communities. The idea is to empower, strengthen, invest in their understanding, because I also see a question on the question answer session by a fellow from NIUA who's speaking about economic resilience, and also speaks about disasters like riots and the other forms of disasters which may not be natural, and how do you actually try to work around that. So the answer to any of this is not simple, because we, after all, speaking about we're speaking about societies and societal understanding. So it is a complicated but a much to be invested in process. And as NGOs, what we've been doing over the last so many years is to strengthen these communities, empower, inform, share information with them. And then we've tried to also, on the other hand, strengthen capacities and capabilities at the local city level. And then with participatory planning processes, and I could go on and on, but in the interest of time over here, but with participatory planning process, we've tried to bridge that gap. For example, if I was to take a case study example, like Chetanji has also shared some in Bangalore, in Dharamshala, we're working with spring water management. So we're working with Bawdis, and the entire idea about building resilience was to actually, because the disconnect between people and the Bawdis had slowly become deepened the gap between Bawdi management and people who were able to access this particular spring water. And Dharamshala's master plan and the smart city concept also tries to enhance the groundwater resilience. So in that aspect, we spent about 2 to 3 years in Dharamshala trying to understand the communities, trying to empower the communities, invest in them, and also in the capacities of Dharamshala Municipal Corporation. And in that kind of long-term or a kind of invested intervention, today we are able to see the partnerships which have resulted between the communities who are actually managing the Baudis themselves and the city government, which is supporting them in this particular thing. So as I said, there are no easy responses, but the idea to invest in people has to be a continuous process, and that will only facilitate and foster these partnerships which are critical. It is a challenging process, but it does happen in certain places, and we need to invest more time. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Barsha. You want to show some videos, or I think, can we open for the question answer session?
No, you can open for the question answer session.
Okay. So thank you all the experts for your valuable insights for this session. Now we will open the forum for the question and answer session from the participants and amongst other people also. So if there are any questions, we can take the questions. From the participants, yeah.
Dr. Madhura, there is one question in the Q&A section.
Okay. In the Q&A chat box, right?
In question and answer.
Okay.
Click that.
Yeah. Sir, I'm not able to open that box.
I'll just read it out.
Okay.
I can read it out. So this is a question which I also referred to, and it's from Radha Karmakar. And he's a smart city fellow at NIUA. And his question is that how do we build economic resilience of the informal sector? Urban bodies do not have local level economic plans, and hence the informal economy does not figure in state level and national level plans exclusively. This makes the informal sector very vulnerable, especially during times of COVID. We've seen the kind of effect migrants and the way they were affected. Disaster can also come in the form of political imbalance, riots, and crime, which again the informal sector is vulnerable to. Can community resilience also be developed around this? I would really be interested to know the opinions and knowledge and experience of our esteemed panelists to understand participatory tools that can be used to build economic and community resilience on the context mentioned above.
Yes, I think experts can opine on this.
Chetanji, do you want to go?
Yeah. Sir, you are muted.
You mute.
We start with Barsha and then.
Achha.
Okay. Okay, so I don't know whether I've been able to respond to it in my previous little presentation, that what you said is very correct. And there are, you have to invest, as I've already said, it does require sometimes some initiatives, tools, and there is this entire process into mobilization, information sharing, and supporting particular youth groups, gender groups, and across. And if I was to just take your question around political imbalances, riots, so a lot of NGOs have been working on that, and the idea is to create that strength and character of that particular settlement to understand and resist themselves to these challenges. But after having said that, there are certain externalities over which we may not have any control over. And then it is difficult, but that's the role that that all of us need to come in at that particular time and actually strengthen the forces which can help in resisting some of these disturbances as we see. Economic resilience, again, something that we need to work on. I think I heard Chetanji, I came in towards the end of it, but he was speaking about contributions to working on certain projects which helps to build community ownership. We've looked at housing programs. We know that poor build incrementally. So you need to speak about economic resilience to be able to strengthen their own housing structures, their own living conditions. And actually you have to look at it from an ecosystemic approach. So we also look at it from an ecosystemic approach where the entire framework of understanding of resilience actually works from people at the center and is able to then address some of these challenges on board. But happy to come on a one-to-one on a more detailed conversation, but that's where I'll stop. Thank you.
Madhura, can I come in?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please, over to you, sir.
I think it's a long but very relevant question. I sincerely believe that there has to be enabling conditions. So it's not that you could independently empower communities. There has to be enabling conditions by the local governments. That is extremely important. And of course, there are tools. A tool which I was involved with extensively is simple GIS-based mapping of slums, which with Pratima Joshi Shelter Associates in Sangli and other places, where they just used to encourage youth to participate in a mapping exercise. And when the maps were displayed in the community, I think the sharing of information is very important point. When the maps were displayed in the community, they became a very strong starting point for this. And as far as money is concerned, the contribution of people is concerned, I always give an example from Ramdev Nagar Slum Improvement Program, where I worked with Himanshu Parekh long ago. And I always give this example, when the slum dwellers were willing to pay 20% of the investment in toilet and individual house in their slum area, low income area, I won't call it slum. And they said, sir, जब आपने हमारा रामदेव नगर को कॉलोनी बोल दिया तो हम आधे खुश हो गए, और जब आपने बोला कि आप हमको टॉयलेट्स देंगे तो मुझे बताना है कि हमारे लड़कों को लड़कियां नहीं मिलती, लेकिन कोई पिताजी अपनी लड़की को सुबह जंगल में भेजना नहीं चाहता, तो आपने टॉयलेट दे दिया और हमको कॉलोनी बोल दिया झोपड़पट्टी से, तो हमारी इज्जत बढ़ गई. So it was not a health issue for him. It was not a physical infrastructure issue for him. For that gentleman and that community, this was a social issue, that they do not want to be called as Chopatpatti or Baroda, and they do not want their daughters to go outside. So this is the kind of thing we really, and this is the kind of empowerment we really need to do. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Manish, you would like to answer? Over to Manish.
Yeah. Ma'am, as Sir ma'am has already opined on this thing, I would just like to add up. Yes, including the community members again, for as a solution which we have already discussed about regarding mapping, and sir has already briefed about GIS and all, enabling them and including them in this particular process as a community member would add upon provision of some economic capacities in the community that would improve upon the economic resilience part. And certain policies like in rural areas, we already have Manrega in place, which is seen as one of the most celebrated and one of the most effective mechanisms of building upon economic resilience. But yes, improve that certain part of it, certain policy mechanisms to be included in the urban areas to put informality into the mainstream, that needs to be found out. Moreover, just on the second part of the question which they have mentioned up, yes, community can resilience of communities can be built against some of the disasters like riots and all. Yes, that can be done. There are certain parameters on which certain works are to be made up. Some of them can be social cohesion, forming up groups, as Barsha ma'am has told, empowering the youths. So they are not discrete in community, but they are together, and they can be made robust too, and a good representation of such groups on the bigger platform and interconnectedness would definitely help them up in building up the community resilience. Yes.
Thank you, Manish.
Yeah.
There is another question for all the panelists, that how have different definitions and understandings of the informal economy affected urban policies and practices? Oh, yes, sir. Over to Chetan Mandish.
I think there are so many definitions of informal sector, but I always, when I started working, I worked for in informal sector area very long ago and few only in Chennai. That was also my starting of my career, but got a whole issue of what is informal sector, and it's just we just believe that informal sector is which is a homogeneous thing. It's not homogeneous. There are lots of kinds of informal sector. It could be skill based, it could be enterprise based, it could be required. So various different. It could also reflect on your communities and caste system, and the informals differs. Though in urban areas we believe that there is a lot of the caste system has gone away. It's not the case even now. So for example, I will give examples on day-to-day basis. I may not limit myself to urban plan. First thing is to understand informal sector could be with enterprise and also without enterprise. There are self-employed. If it's a laborer who goes and stands on the main road on day-to-day basis, it's an informal sector without enterprise. His investment is only time or that particular day. But then there are people who got into enterprise. Again, enterprise could be of different kinds. Enterprise could be in terms of vegetable market person, a small shop, or other kind of investment. So this is, and it has implications on land and space requirement. And third thing I want to tell you, simple skills can improve the strength and the resilience of these communities, of the so-called informal sector community. I was doing an interview of a barber. Barber would require a loan to buy equipment. He said, you give me money to buy a bicycle and my distance I can travel will increase and that is my income. And he was willing to pay for the bicycle if he gets a loan for the bicycle. And of course, this was a few years ago. If it is today, it may not be bicycle, it could be a moped. But if you can pay for his moped as a loan, he could pay for the moped and earn more money and more confident his distance where he can travel. That is an example. Similarly, we are talking to, I work with an organization called SAT in Ahmedabad. I'm on their board. A lot of experiments with different, and we are realizing that particularly we are working more with women and what could be different kinds of skills they could be provided to improve their income and their marketability. And Saath is realizing even if you take a simple maid and if you can tell her how to use electrical equipment, her monthly salary goes up from 10 to 20%. If you are a maid servant who can take care of your electrical equipment, you know, like simple stove or pressure cooker, or things like this, microwave, her income increases by 20%. Similarly, if the maid who can take care of child and learn a little bit of English, Sani, if you can learn English, she can handle a mobile phone more than a simple talking, WhatsApp and other things. Her income increases by 10 to 20%. I think that is the kind of implication you have. And one can explore, now take it to the urban sector. I have not thought on those lines. But if you take on the urban sector, where for the vendors, I mean, the vendor policies, if you provide vendors at a proper space, proper recognition, simple proper recognition, the possibility of increasing their income and their resilience to disasters, man-made as well as natural, will increase over time. This is the kind I have on informal sector skills and understanding. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, Dr. Barsha?
No, I don't want to add anything. Chetanji has elaborated.
Manish, you want to add to this question?
No, ma'am, please. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, so then we can conclude this session. I would like to thank all the experts for their valuable insights on urban resilience and putting informality at the planning at the center of city planning. And as said by Professor Chetan Vaidya, either professional practice guides the higher education or guides the professional practice. It is a very important, I think he said, and we need to, as a higher education institution, as sir said, that in the curriculum, we have to include these models, not as an elective, because if we include as an elective, so only few students will take it, but it has to be a part of the core curriculum. So we have to try for that as a higher education institution, sir, as you rightly said. And he said that it should be a commercially viable this thing, and we have to involve the local government into that. And given the example of Kerala also, so there has to be a very strong local government, and it has to be both way approach, like top down approach and bottom top approach also, because we need to strengthen the communities. We need to empower them, as Dr. Barsha also said and Manish also said. So we have to invest, empower and strengthen the communities. We have to share with them, then we have to strengthen their capabilities and capacities also. And Manish has also touched upon these two things, that climate change adoption and disaster risk resilience. So we have to focus on the urban services in a decentralized manner. And as all the experts have said, that community participation at all the level is very, very important. And as mentioned by Dr. Barsha, I think we have different kinds of plan at different levels. So understanding and mapping of informality is very, very essential. And that I think she mentioned that Krivia Mumbai has taken, and then NIT Hamirpur, and I'm sure that SPAs also have taken these kind of exercises, but other institutions also should involve in these kind of exercises, because I have seen over my, I think, 26 years of my service in as a teacher, we never taught slums to the students of, and they don't know anything about slums, architecture and planning students. So we have to teach and include this thing in our curriculum, and then there has to be a community participation, and both should, like government also should take community into the, while taking any decisions. So urban local bodies, then engaging citizens is very important, and putting slums at the center of city also is very important. And we have to develop a new research methodologies for studying informal settlements. And as rightly said by Chetan sir also, we have to link it with the indexes. And indexes have to be linked with the informal settlements. And we have to give more time and efforts for investment in research, data also, because data is also very important. So we have to invest more time, more investment into the research. And as he rightly said, that when we go for a pilot study, it is very important to have the more database, then more research and more investments for doing any kind of pilot project, as he mentioned example of vaccine also. So we have to take away from this session is, yes, higher educations also are a very important, plays a key role in this. And there has to be a both approach, like top down and bottom down approach. And we have to see the challenges of this, like what are the challenges for resilience? Like, for example, inadequate understanding of financial benefits of investing in resilience. Then second is lack of capacity to absorb and program funds for these kind of resilience projects. And there are challenges with scaling up, like local and bottom-up financing for resilience has made quite effective on isolated pockets. So these remain the challenges around scaling up this for a greater impact and sustainability. So I think we can. Yes, sir. You want to say something, sir? Chetan, sir?
I use
Sir, you are muted.
I didn't want to say commercially viable. I wanted to say economically viable. I wrongly used
Yes,
that.
yes,
I'm
sorry.
very sorry.
No.
So
Economically
many
viable.
times I am with private sector, so I make that mistake. I wanted to say economically viable.
Okay, sir. Yes. Rajesh, sir, you want to add something? Dr. Rajesh, sir? Yes, sir.
No, thank you very much. I have been listening very intently to this conversation and deliberations. And now, actually, we are supposed to give you what is called a break from the machine or the screen. So why don't we do one thing? When we have a face-to-face conference, my experience of last 40 years of organizing face-to-face conference is that if you give people lunch break, then the attendance after lunch is substantially reduced. So, so if I'm in two minds whether to give you all a screen break or not. But so let's take a 3-4 minute screen break. You may need to go to the bathroom, collect your glass of water, a cup of tea, but come back. By my watch, it says it's 11:59, about 12 o'clock. So in 5 minutes, if you are back, all of you, not just the new set of resource persons we have, but also all of you who have participated so far, because I'm going to help us to think about this question that you ended with, Dr. Madhura, very rightly. How can we prepare the next generation of professionals who understand the issues of informality and resilience together? That is the main question that I hope all of us can contribute to. And we have a new set of discussion to kick off the discussion. So take a 5-minute break. I am also going to switch off my camera and go use the washroom.
Thank you.
Good afternoon now. We are past noon, so I am welcoming afternoon. And those of you who have returned to your screens, may please put your video on. And we are not a very large group, so we can all participate and listen and contribute. Welcome, Anshu. Good to see you.
Thank you, sir. Great privilege.
Thank you for joining. Wonderful. Wonderful.
Sir, can I introduce you?
Welcome.
Rajesh,
Huh?
can I introduce you and then you can take over, or?
You can introduce me. I mean, I can
Yeah,
introduce myself. What is the problem?
No.
Introduce me.
Ajay, yeah,
Okay.
I'll introduce you and then I'll. Yeah. So I think welcome is done by already Dr. Rajesh Tandon. So I will introduce, he is the moderator for the session now. So Dr. Tandon is an internationally acclaimed and practitioner of participatory research and development. He is founder president of Participatory Research in Asia, BReUCom, Global Center for Participatory Research and Training since 1982. He has been appointed as a co-chair of the prestigious UNESCO Chair in Community-Based Research and Social Responsibility in Higher Education for 3 terms, from like 2012 to 16, then 16 to 20, and 20 to 24. An electronics engineer from IIT Kanpur, MBA from IIM Calcutta, and PhD in management from Case Western University, USA. Dr. Tandon has served on numerous expert committees of Government of UGC, UN, Commonwealth, and World Bank, a pioneer of participatory research, and he has given new meaning to academic research by redefining the relationship between researcher and the researched. So welcome you, sir, and over to you for this session.
Thank you, Madhura. And welcome to all of you. We have had a very interesting conversation in the previous 1 hour, and I want to take it forward. So first of all, let me welcome the colleagues who are going to be kicking it off. But all of you are participants in this hour. But we have, so I'm going to introduce you, the speakers. I'm set this in a few minutes, and then we will start. So I'm going to actually have some practice, and we have some academics. So, and some of them, you know, bridge the world. So like me. So Dr. Anshu Sharma, he is one of the founders of SEEDS. SEEDS has been very active on the issues of disaster and resilience planning, not only in India, but in many parts of South and Southeast Asia. Welcome, and great to see you here. And then we have another practitioner, a long-standing practitioner from Mumbai and from around the world, called Ms. who is a founder of SPARK and also the former chair of Slum and Shack Dwellers International. Welcome, Shia. Good to have you. Yeah. And then we have a trained architect, if I may call BReUCom Nayak, who is with MUJ, and you will also be an important part of this conversation. Yes, and welcome. And of course we have Dr. Madhura, then we have Dr. Chetan Vaidya, we have Dr. Harsha, and we have Dr. Manish, and more importantly, we have all of you. So let me just set the stage. What is it that we are going to discuss? During the pandemic, the only economy that worked where I live in Delhi was the informal economy. Vendors, vegetable vendors, some plumbers, some bread delivery boy, and every time I looked around, all formal part of the system was shut down, and much of it remains still shut down. So what is surprising about having a country where roughly 90% of its workforce continues to be engaged in formal economy, that we are sort of sometimes unable to see it. There was no, I mean, pandemic showed it white and clear once again. Then urbanization at the pace at which it has been happening in the country and around the world also is fueling urban economy. Many of us realized during the pandemic that it's not easy to cook, clean, wash, do jhadu pocha, and put up your own bulb even. We were dependent on providers who were all informal. All informal. Nobody phoned Reliance to come and do some jhadu pocha for us. So we are dependent on the support that people in the informal sector provide. Many of you have seen Priya. Every time I go there, there is a Batra hospital. And I grew up in a city called Kanpur, which is a railway station city. Railway station, hospital, 24/7. And on 24/7, there are people, and therefore they are service providers. In front of Batra hospital, every fortnight, some municipality or policeman comes and tells people to remove their informal shops. But they are the only service providers. They provide food, they provide transport, they provide ambulance. Even ambulance service for Batra hospital is all informal. A van which has said ambulance. You can't track them except their mobile number. They're not part of a national or a global company of ambulance service providers. And the fellow who makes tea there, he performs an economic function. Service. Those who come to Batra hospital, we know in this country, it's not just the patient, the family and the village comes. Who will look after them? Batra hospital says stay out. Where will they stay? Where will they stay? So, informal economy is an integral part of India's reality, and more so in urban centers than anywhere else. And therefore, Professor Vaidya was saying, it's not homogeneous informality, occupational, cultural, varieties. Some are self-employed, some are daily wage, some are daily wage in disguise, because even vulnerable employment has been increasing. So the question that I am posing to you is that if we have to take the report of the IPCC produced 10 days ago, which provides dire recommendations about what is going to happen to the planet and therefore to us, seriously, then the way we run our cities, the way we design our cities, the way we plan our cities has to be rethought. But resilience in urban context is far problematic at the moment than resilience in rural context. You can return to organic agriculture, you can return to water harvesting, you can go back to planting trees in rural areas. But in the urban areas, when you plan a flyover and a highway, you think everybody goes in a bus or a car, 2, 3 or 4 or 5 wheelers. No, there are some people who go bicycle and some who walk. And every time a flyover is built, these people are seen, walking with their bicycle on top of the flyover or jumping across roads. And then we say these idiots don't know how to cross road. But there is no. In the last 2-3 years in Delhi, I am seeing that even road crossings have been blocked with strong cement blocks because motorcycle drivers have occupied the pavement. So where will the bicycle fellows go? Where students go? And bicycles and pedestrians are sustainable. Automobiles are not. Even if you make them green, they are not. So when Asian Games happens or Commonwealth Games happens, we produce some bicycle pathway. But that is decoration. That is not integral to our urban planning. So the question is not that this needs to happen. My question to all of you, starting with Anshu, and then I'll ask Bibu and Sheila, and then Madhura, and then open it up. Answer to you all, question to you all is that I want you to think and give your experience and understanding. How can we change professional education of those who are responsible for planning and development and management of urban habitations? I think it is not just architects who need this question to be addressed, but all kinds of civil engineers also. And some of you got your degrees from IITs or engineering institutions, not from schools of planning or architecture. And please give this response to this question, not thinking about metros. Don't think about Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, Chennai, etc. Think about Ajmer, Muzaffarpur, Jhansi, Dharwad, Sambalpur. Don't even think about Jaipur and Bhubaneswar or Pune, you know, these fancy examples. There are 8,000 of these cities in the country. And governance of these urban habitations includes planning for resilience, including informality. So what can we do to influence the preparation, professional preparation of all those responsible for this? I know that in some towns there are no planners. That is also clear. But in places where there are engineers, other kinds of people employed, what kind of education the next generation can have? Those who have already studied, you can do some extra course for them. But those who are coming out, those who will be occupying these positions, what kind of preparation they should go through, both in terms of curriculum and also in terms of pedagogy. My examples have been given, but I want to tease out your experience. So start with you, Anshu, Dr. Anshu Sharma, one of the founders of SEECH.
Thank you so much, sir. Great privilege being here. I think it would be too much for me to dare to answer the question you posed, though I completely realize its importance. I think what I'll try to do in the next 3-4 minutes is think aloud on two lines of thinking that I think are important for us as we approach this, this question. And the first one that's been bothering me is our own understanding of, partly what has been talked about in the earlier session on our understanding of the informal sector, but also our own understanding of resilience. Resilience to what? So, आपने जैसे बोला sir. So yesterday I was sitting with a doctor friend and I was trying to ask, this third wave, there's a kid at home who needs to go to school and all, and she says, अब तो हमारे पास कोविड केसेस नहीं आ रहे हैं, अब तो डेंगू केसेस आ रहे हैं.
He's on mute.
You got muted by mistake. Sorry. Last point.
Sorry about that. Yeah. So when this doctor friend spoke about dengue rather than COVID worrying her these days, two things flashed in my head. One was that for an affected family, that where people go down with dengue, they have to be treated, some lives get lost. Dengue must be as bad a disaster as COVID. And it must be, while IPCC talks of a very high level code red, us family ke liye to that must be code red. right? So, but it's not on our radar. We have not seen it in any news. We are not talking about it. There are cases that are coming to the clinics. And the second problem, more from a professional point of view, that hit me was, if when we're talking of building resilience, to what is that resilience? You know, and the moment we say resilience, our conversations are around large scale floods, cyclones, major pandemics. I come from a world where we worry a lot about earthquakes also. But then, you know, what about those low impact but high probability, very frequent kind of events that are at a very large scale creating these problems? And again, as you said, not the metros, talk about the 7,000 small and medium towns across the country. What's happening there? And as a professional, I then realized that dengue is actually a built environment problem. The health sector only responds to it. The municipalities only do firefighting, very short-term preparedness before the monsoons to clean the drains. But in cities where we haven't built those drains, in cities where we have been constantly creating living spaces, whether formal or more of informal, in low-lying areas where water fills up, water logging happens, which is not a flood, which does not make headlines, but it causes these problems. You know, so the role there is of the planner. And in some ways, what we've been trying to sort of arrive at is that almost all public health problems and health related impacts of disasters are rooted in the built environment. So we run after doctors, but we should actually be blaming the architects and the planners for almost everything, including a large part of COVID that we saw in recent times. So that was one thought, sir. The other, I thought, is more on the lines of, you know, this particular session, which is around the people, the kids we are training, and they're coming out of these colleges. So while I'm a student of urban planning, I also at times try to teach, but I want to speak for 2 minutes as a consumer of, you know, the products of these institutions, you know, that train these young boys and girls in these professions. And for the last 20-25 years, sitting in seats, I've been trying to, you know, work with them. We have many colleagues who come from these colleges, and I want to underscore 3 critical problems that I see that we need to work upon. Number one, we in our education system, and as a result in our practice, we don't see slum dwellers as clients. We see them as beneficiaries. And there's a huge problem because our attitude changes. And one Hindi quote that sticks in my head, I'll share it, came from a colleague. उन्होंने बोला कि दान की गैया के दांत नहीं गिने जाते. You know, so in the rural context, when you go to buy a cow, you count the teeth of the cow. But when a cow is being given as a donation, you don't count because you'll take whatever you're being given. And this is used in the context of planning, right? So उसके informal sector को हम जो दे रहे हैं उसको वो लेना होगा. वो client नहीं है, वो negotiate नहीं करेगा उसके साथ back and forth. That is one problem that I find, and I've been there, so I can see it where it's coming from in our education systems. The second problem is a more technical one, that we can't budget. वो जो हम बातें कर रहे हैं वो करने के लिए कितना खर्चा होगा, where will the money come from, what budget the municipality or the development authority have, and once spent, what return will it give? You know, this is the world of return on investment. We want to talk about social investments and social returns on investments. We are not equipping our next generation of professionals to be able to do that. And the third and the last thing that I want to talk about is a little bit on technology. I do have an interest in gizmos and gadgets. And, you know, I've been trying hard. The colleagues have told me that day after tomorrow is the last day for filing comments on the Delhi master plan draft. I'm just unable to do it because I have such a fundamental problem with the way the planning is being done. Us product, us plan par kya comment karun when I completely disagree with your process where you're trying to envisage what will happen to the city 20 years from now. We can't even imagine 2 years from now. So how will you fix the land use and the infrastructure? And we're trying to do it in a context with this smartphone that all of you are having in your pocket or your desk. It's giving you data where you can literally lively, you know, in a live format, track where your city is going on a weekly basis, probably even on 2 days basis. So this is where I'll stop for now, sir. The ethics of the practice, the economics of the practice, and the technology that needs to go into the practice. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I like your approach of saying as a consumer of these products. Very good, because then you can see what needs to change. Wonderful. Thank you. Let me go to the next person who's also a trained professional architect and teacher, architect Bibu Kalyan Nayak, who's with MUJ. Your reflections on this. What needs to change in the training of professionals who are now entering the profession in urban planning, urban management? Bibu.
Thank you, sir. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. And first of all, I would like to thank the entire team of BReUCom and Dr. Madhura for giving me this opportunity to speak on such an elite panel. And sometimes with these kind of privileges, we have to be very, very careful what we speak. Yeah. So in this talk of reflections, I would like to speak from my own experience. First of all, when we talk about these informal settlements or the formal settlement, formal, informal differentiation we do, we all knew that some way or other, informality is the reason we have all the luxuries in our life, right? And I think COVID has proved it right as well. When we don't have any maid in our house, we don't have drivers coming in, even the sweeper in the society stopped coming in. So we realize that where all these privileges and luxuries are coming from. So when we try to teach all this in a very structured environment, especially in higher education, the environment is pretty much structured. We have a syllabus, we have instructions how to teach. Including these things are a real challenge. I don't deny that syllabus are useless. They are very, very effective in many ways, but they are too structured. And when we talk about something like informality, which is very cross-disciplinary, it is also distributed across a wide range of domains. So if we say, okay, let's train architects about informality or planners about informality, what about civil engineers? What about the mechanical engineers? What about the lawyers? What about the social science? What about the sciences people? I think this topic of informality has to go in some or other form to each and every syllabus in a wide range of domain. That is most important thing. Second thing, I would like to tell you a very, very small story, because that is my experience. When I was doing my master's in SEP, I had a very close friend. He topped his class. They were in housing, 20 people out there. They have done extensive studies of slums and a lot of informal settlements. Few of them also got a DART scholarship to go and do their internships in Germany. Wonderful. But when all of them graduated, out of 20, 15 of them ended up working for a real estate company. So there is certainly a lack of opportunity for these graduates, which means there are not many social entrepreneurs these days. And I think that responsibility also lies with higher education, because we failed somehow to motivate young minds to become social entrepreneurs. Third thing, what I'm trying to talk about, when we teach, when in higher education institutions, we talk about a syllabus, we talk about various case studies, different ideas, but primarily at a fundamental level, we try to train them how to develop their own perspective. And in the process, if we really want to sensitize them about informality, how are we going to teach them empathy? How are we going to teach them how to even start communicating with them? Because yes, in a book or in form of a paper, it is very, very fancy sometimes to talk about all this. But when we simply ask them, okay, you go to a slum, talk to those people, and try to find out what is their problem. And many times I have found that they are even unable to start a conversation. They fail to communicate. And once that barrier is broken, the communication starts. It is also another challenge comes up, which is collaboration. How do you collaborate? Because sometimes we feel, okay, isko kya aata hai? What do these guys know? No, these are dirty people. These are dirty places of our cities. So we need to clean it up. Perhaps that's the psyche. A lot of students, a lot of people, even professionals go into these slum areas or informal settlements. And I think when only we are able to collaborate with them, make them a stakeholder in our process, I think the capacity is going to be built. And the capacity that we are going to build through these process by facilitating learning by doing it, I think the real capacity is going to build, and with a lot of connect, and they will become more empathetic towards all these things. Because learning these ideas, concepts are one thing, and then after graduating, working for them, it's a lot of passion. I think a lot of people are from the civil society here. They can say that when you actually start working for it, the real learning happens, and it is really, really doing the classroom learning. And you need passion only pure passion to survive here. So I would like to conclude my reflection with a small idea that can we stop calling these places informal, rather we start calling them a different kind of formality that exists. Because the moment we call them formal, they are no more black, they are no more gray, they are as white as the formal sector is. I think we have to change the lens that we are looking at these places, these spaces, and these people. And I think the collaboration phase will start only after we stop calling them informal. This is my personal view, and I would like to conclude my reflection with this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vibhu. Very important point, because as earlier Chetanji was saying, how we name these communities, we say Malin Basti, Gandhi Basti, Kachi Basti. By labeling them in a particular way, we give them a status and an identity which keeps them at the bottom of the totem pole. So very good point that you have raised, and also your experience of how, if everybody is going to join real estate, why bother? Huh? So where are the opportunities? Very important. Let me move on now to our third panelist, Ms. Sheila Patel. Sheila has vast experience in India and internationally on this issue. Sheila, your thoughts. How can we create opportunities for the education of next generation of professionals who work on urban planning and urban management and urban governance, if you know?
Thank you, Rajesh, and hello to everybody in this event. My first inclination is to just react and respond to everything that everybody else has said. But I want to start with a very radical alternative reflection. I was part of founding an organization called Slum or Shack Dwellers International, which now works in 33 countries and about 500 cities all over Asia, Africa, and Latin America. And the first thing everybody said, oh, why do you want to call it slum dwellers? And we said, just like Shakespeare said, a rose is a rose by any other name, a slum is a slum by any other name. So let's not pretend that the name and the nomenclature and saying cute things, it's not formal, it's this, it's that, is going to change the reality that we have consolidated historical exclusionary practices in sophisticated formal systems that our present educational system has deepened, sharpened, and it's not going to be chipped away with cute little things that we are all talking about. So let's start with acknowledging that formal northern exclusionary practices of creating cities for extrapolation of resources and depleting ownership and access to amenities and services and maintaining large volumes of people at the services of the few is something that in all our post-colonial educational system, we have not only entrenched, but we have legitimatized to an extent that it far exceeds what it began with because of what it has done to our cities today. So we talk about 93% of India being informal. We've been saying this for the last 30 years. There is no chipping away at that. Planners and architects are the easiest people to punch because they remain at the very center of legally framing the exclusionary practices in deeper and more entrenched ways. And our inability, today, as Anshu said, civil society organizations may get one or two young people who may stray into our work to experience something. They develop empathy, they develop excitement for a minimum part, but in reality, the only way they can do something which is financially viable is to join the construction industry. So if we start with that, then we don't have any idealistic aspirations, but we start with a reality check of what exactly needs to be done. If you take this in the context of resilience and climate, then our cities are actually going to be the largest areas of crisis because they are designed, the investments are made on completely unrealistic and indefensible ways. And that the impact of the carbon emissions that they do, their inability to cope with extreme heat, extreme cold, too much rain, too much wind, desertification, which is going to reduce all the water access, is going, you may talk about large cities and small cities, is going to happen across everywhere. And finally, whether we like it or not, the next 10 years is going to exacerbate migration to cities. And all the people who come into these cities, 90% of them or 95% of them are going to further densify the informal settlements. So let's not minimize the starkness of the crisis that we are going to face. And I don't think we have enough radical bones in our intellectual and our physical capacities to overturn our conventional and traditional things, because we keep talking about cute little things of what one city has done, the other city, all of us, all the speakers have talked about lighthouse processes. The time for lighthouse and pilots is gone. There are lots of evidence of powerful alternatives that politically are not going to be accepted. So the question now is not of doing small little things somewhere, but to explore what's going to transform this process. So I think it would be really interesting for all of us, and those of you who are in the center of reproducing exclusionary practices, to say, what are all of you going to do? Because where those of us who work with informal settlements, we are very clear that the solutions have to come from them on what they want, in ways that they want. and their ability to demonstrate their aggregated alternative mechanisms is going to be the thin edge of the wedge that may bring change. But I don't think that the present discussion on climate change or resilience or research that is being conducted today in that space is going to be heeded by the political interests in our country to bring the kind of radical change we need. And the reality is that today, poor people's ability to survive and produce survival solutions are often termed as resilience. But what is not being acknowledged is that it erodes whatever resources that they have. And they're all trapped in this myth of marginality. You know, that because they actually constitute the largest single constituency in the city. So I want to stop there and have a real conversation about the real challenges that we face. Because in the end, unless educational institutions, local authorities, and informal settlements have a long-term, multi-decadal relationship to find solutions, there is no other way that we can change anything. That's my position. So I'll stop here. And Rajesh, I really want us to have a open for all, serious and difficult conversation.
Thanks, Sheila.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It is not an easy conversation, I agree, and it's not very clear in terms of what we can do first or second post of this webinar. Madhura, your reflections, and then I'm going to invite Barsha and Professor Vaidya as well. And so, and those of you who want to comment on it, don't ask questions, just give ideas, your perspectives. Yes, Madhura.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Rajesh. And I think almost all the issues are covered, most of the issues are covered by other experts. But I would just like to elaborate on the issue brought up by Dr. Anshulji. I think before doing anything or before practicing anything, it is necessary to understand the things as a theory, and then we can practice. So first, it is very important to understand what is informality and what is resilience. Otherwise, a poor understanding of the complexities of informality can lead to a poor planning and design interventions. So it is very essential to provide a better understanding of how forms of informality work is then a task for higher education. So it is my own experience when I was doing a survey of slums in Mumbai and slums in Delhi as a part of my research methodology when I was pursuing PhD from SPA. So we went to the slums of like IPO slums. They were rehabilitated somewhere else. And we did a survey of all the households. So it was very shocking to know that most of them were lost their jobs. Because they were saying earlier we used to travel and we were having the proximity to the transport. So we used to travel by bus or something like that. So the traveling time was less and we used to cover all the work. But now it is very difficult for us to reach the destinations where we work because traveling time has increased. It takes almost an hour. And the second thing about their health issues, which we have observed is whatever water they were getting, that was mixed with the sewerage, and through hand pump, they were getting the greenish water. So it was very dangerous for their health. So we have to think about these issues while rehabilitating these people, like their socio-cultural and socio-economic needs. The same case in Mumbai also, in Dharavi, they are doing basically a leather work. So for cutting that leather, we require certain kind of space and platforms and the drainage systems and to wash that and everything. But they were shifted to Mankhurd in a high-rise tower. So they were asking, what about our this cutting of leather, washing of leather? These needs are not taken into consideration. So while doing this kind of projects, we need to teach the students that how socio-cultural and socio-economic needs are addressed, and otherwise providing like poor understanding will not lead to the better in design and planning interventions. And this providing a better understanding of how forms of informality work is the key task for higher education. Now, how we can do that? The first thing is that in higher education, we are having different programs like undergraduate program, post-graduation program, and the PhD programs also. So we need to connect this like subjects, and the primary focus should be responding to informality through establishing a lateral connection across the subjects. For example, enabling the multi-scalar thinking, then incorporating field study visits. Like undergrad students only can document or collect the data by survey. Then PG students can take it for analysis, and then PhD students can do solutions for or recommendations for that kind of thing. We have to think about the vertical studios, and for like incorporating joint field studies, then developing thematic design studios or planning studios. Then we can draw the national and international field study visits based on the criteria of accessibility and data richness. And this developed program is by no means a prescriptive or a fully comprehensive, but yet the suggested approach can be considered as an initial step towards an informal turn. Then the implementation of the developed program remains at once as a key limitation of the work and task for future research. Now, to explore the ways in which informality works across different scales and contexts, a sophisticated understanding of how places works puts us in a better position to approach interventions. So the task is then to look hard at cities, then adopt multiple methods to explore theories and avoid forms of reduction, and then reflection in the absence of confrontation with actual places can open the doors to prejudice and then ideologies. And the aim should not only be simply applying the theories originated to formulate the design or planning recipes for the practice, but to explore the dynamics of informality through close encounters before jumping into any conclusion about how informal urbanism should be addressed. So I think higher education can mostly engage with the forms of informality which have become integral but not limited to the cities. So reaching out the sophisticated understanding of the dynamics of informality in relation to the public space, urban morphology, even the place identity is particularly at stake, where most literature on informal urbanism needs to valorize the macro scale. So higher education plays a very important role in equipping the future designers and planners with the knowledge and skills required to address these complexities of urbanization with a focus on informality to sustain livelihoods. So higher education cannot remain isolated from the questions of informality anymore now. And as rightly said by the last speaker, that the collaboration between the institutions, governance, and local bodies and community is essential. So like, for example, we are working on the Jaipur World Heritage City with Drona Foundation. Like for the open spaces of World City, we are doing some analysis and trying to give some interventions. So likely that, like Priya is also doing a lot of work in this area. So there is a need to collaborate institution, then NGOs and government bodies with the community. So it will happen, like we can train the future students or future trainers in designing and planning with the informality at the city center.
Thank you very much, Dr. Madhura. Thank you for bringing or reiterating the significance of collaboration in training the next generation, bringing the community into play. I'm going to open this up to not only our previous speakers, like those who have spoken now, Anshu, Vibhu, Sheila, but also Dr. Barsha, Professor Vaidya, and Manish, and also all of you who are here. What can we do to strengthen the training and education of next generation of professionals responsible for planning and management of our urban habitations, so that informality and questions of resilience are integrated and not become add-on? Who is going to make some observations now? Barsha, yes, please.
Yeah, okay. So thank you so much. Actually, I'd like to, the questions that Sheila raised and the earlier panelists, I think that is very, very critical. So I will not take much time, Rajesh bhai. I'll just share two parts to it in some ways of taking it forward. Is one of the things that we need to also understand, recognize, is that civil society organizations or NGOs as we know them, and the CBOs and the communities that Sheila mentioned come with a lot of evidence from the ground. But the kind of partnerships that right now exist between higher education institutions and NGOs is that of need-based. In the sense, when there is a need to kind of have an NGO understanding of informality, you are recognized and you are called and you speak to the students. But that's a very limited, in a very limited framework. There is no follow-up. So what here I would like to bring on point is that, and I am a student of planning, so I will speak from a planning perspective. I don't have much idea about the architecture, and I do a little bit of teaching on planning, is where this kind of an interaction and relationship and collaboration between evidence from the ground and all those practitioners who are doing this and higher education institutions need to be strengthened. There has to be a structure to it. There has to be a respect to both the professional entities, and to understand that somebody is theorizing, but the practice informs theory and theory informs practice too, has to be understood. And right now, I feel, it is my personal opinion, that it's a one-way track. It is theory which is informing the practice, and that is why recognition for theorists is so much rather than practitioners. But I feel that kind of a relationship and trust building is required to take part of this conversation forward. The second is that we also have to understand, and I'll just refer back to what Sheila mentioned about this radical transformation, and we do need to see it in at least, I don't know how many of us will be able to see it in our lifetime, but at least in the next, because otherwise then we are going to keep on coming back to this question 30 years later. Manipal University of Jaipur will still be asking these questions at that point of time. I think what needs to be also recognized and appreciated, and where HEIs will also have a role to play, is the space for dissent. The space for dissent, to be able to put forth your view in a constructive manner to the local body, to the governing situations, and to tell them that what could be a better way to perform is something that I feel is still missing amongst our fraternity. So I think that to be able to speak up, to be able to speak what could be based on certain evidences, I think that's also something that I don't know how do we bring it in, but that's also, I think, a candid conversation around this will also help to take some. Otherwise, we're only kind of supporting, or even if we have dissent, we are not able to voice it in whatever platform. Thank you so much for giving me the space.
Thank you very much, Barsha. I'm gonna, Sheila, you wanted to make some comments, and then I'm gonna invite Professor Vaidya also.
I have a very interesting story, and if it's something that is of interest to all the professional planners and educators, I will even help set up a webinar that Rajesh, you can host as a person with a foot on each side. So I want to give the story that when the Dharavi SPA was set up, all the residents of Dharavi revolted against it because it was basically seen as a process by which the residents' township was going to be converted into 2/3 of the land being sold off to the developers and 1/3 housing people in even more cramped spaces. We did not succeed in getting what the communities wanted in that plan, despite everything. But the residents' associations were able to stop this billion-dollar construction program. Several years later, the government of Kenya gave the residents of Mukuru and the federation that is part of STI the right to design an SPA for Mukuru, which is one of the largest informal settlements in Nairobi, where 70% of Nairobi lives in informal settlements. And in the last 2 years, with the help of many NGOs and many planners, communities collected data, they worked with different groups of people, and they produced a plan that has been accepted by the Nairobi City Council. And already it has become the president's project. And the president has started off by creating roads, sewer systems, toilets, health services, and other things. And the reason for this is that for the first time, the documentation showed that the informal settlement is an integral part of the city. And the longer you take to make investments in informal settles, the more expensive it is. And that challenges and problems are so interdependent that by making these investments, it was a long-term strategy to make it work for the city itself. This is probably the first time that such an SPA completely designed and represented by communities has been done. And STI is now working with the municipalities to do it in 5 other informal settlements in Nairobi. The irony is that UN Habitat's office is in Nairobi, and most of the people sitting there don't know about this SPA. So what we're saying is that there is such a radical possibility designed by communities with full support of planning professionals. Now, how can we make this lighthouse into normal practice? This should be done in every informal settlement, which is large, where you can do a special planning act to get this area designed in ways that allows the city to do what it should do. And like was said right in the beginning, when he spoke about Indore, poor people pay more per bucket of water, per use of electricity, for everything, 5 to 10 times more than what you and I pay. So there's a poverty penalty. It is not free. It is stolen electricity, stolen water that poor people pay. So I'm just saying, what can we do to make this part of your educational process? What can we do to make sure that there will no longer be permissible for upgrading of informal settlements to produce gentrification? That's a new form of eviction. So these are the kind of things I feel we need to talk about. Thanks, Rajesh.
Thank you, Sheila. Dr. Anshu, any reflections on this debate from you?
Not really, sir. I'm still absorbing it, and I think as per the title of this session, I keep going back to you know what Bibu was also saying, what do we do in our schools of college and colleges of planning and architecture today? So cute little projects are there in some of our teaching, as Sheilaji calls them, but there's too much of fundamental stuff that has to happen, and that's where the multidisciplinarity of the subject comes in, because you can't process a lot of things unless you've got into legislation. We are working with such archaic laws that are defining how we are supposed to plan, which is my problem, as I said, with the master planning process. So it's very wide, and the original question you tabled is something we probably all have to grapple with many weeks of concerted efforts. But thanks for this. Still thinking.
Thank you, Professor Vaidya.
I have not much to add, but I think we need to properly document this. One example from Nairobi, which was mentioned, and there are also other successful examples. We need to document them and put them in the Higher Education Training Institute. And also what I mentioned in the earlier session, the planning guidelines have to change both at national level, state level, and city level to integrate both the affordable, I call them affordable settlements, as well as from the point of view of resilience. I think that both issues have to be, and once they are there in all the three guidelines, how they can be applied. But I am really not sure it's the education, higher education, which will change the profession, or the profession which will change the higher education. At the moment, it seems the profession is expected to change the higher education system. But it could, if you invest in research and give enough time to that, it could be also other way around. I think I'll stop at that. It was very interesting discussion, Rajesh ji.
Thank you very much. I like almost like, there are certain professions. If you take legal profession, for example, there's a lot of professional practice which determines what is being taught. And this interplay between the profession in the world of practice and what you learn in your education is inevitable in many professional areas. Medical profession, another one, where a lot of practice is actually integrated in the learning and teaching of students. Hospital is an integral part of a medical college. But what hospital misses out is community health. What hospital doesn't have is the community. Some have done innovative work by reaching out and building community links. All medical colleges have departments of community health, but for some, it is the community that comes in the hospital for curative purposes, not the community that manages preventive health. And if they were looking at preventive health, some of the challenges of the pandemic could have been addressed earlier. I think any other comments? Anybody, Bibu or any other people who have been around and listening very patiently?
Rajesh, can I make one small comment?
Yes, Bibu, please.
In our planning courses, we have something called planning studios, which are like our laboratories. So that is where all the theory should enter into, and we should put it in practice. That is central to our education, and that is where we'll have to bring the change. Thank you so much.
I just have one more question to Sheila ma'am. As she has herself being a very successful social entrepreneur. My question is, how do we encourage the culture of social entrepreneurship in our higher education institution? Because one entrepreneur cannot solve it. We need millions of them. So how do we do it?
Shall I answer, Rajesh?
Yeah, please.
See,
quickly.
No. So whatever, all of us who have, who know that the breakthroughs that are there, how do we communicate with others? How do we mainstream the impact of that? I think the problem right now is that there's such a vertical hierarchy of who legitimizes what, that knowledge that comes from below is never given serious legitimacy. So I feel that that there is a need, like Harsha said, to transform these hierarchies into acknowledging that different knowledge comes from different sources, and our ability to interrogate it and use it to replace things that don't work is a critical part of the evolution that is needed. Only it has to be radical and it has to be very fast. Otherwise, incrementally, it's not going to happen.
Thanks, Sheila. Anybody else wants to make any observation among those of you who have been patiently listening? Kostav, Nikita, Niharika, I see some Minali. Of course, I'm going to call on you to give vote of thanks in a minute. I'm not going to summarize this, but I think that there are three interesting takeaways from this conversation. And my starting point is basically that we all are aware that informality, questions of resilience are here to stay. When I studied planning, I'm not an architect, as Madhura's introduction. I studied planning as a student of management, and actually I have taught planning to people, both in School of Management, but also in development planning. But planning is always expected to serve a shared goal or purpose. Planning for what? And if we say planning for integrating informality to serve resilience, as Anshu was saying, resilience also needs to be defined more in a everyday life sense as opposed to in a grandiose sense, then all plans by their very nature require data, which cannot be the data that we produce from decadal census, but also granular data, because cities as habitations are constantly in flux, changing. The wards move, the habitation move, the economy moves, but granular data is not available for doing this kind of planning, because granular data requires the kind of research that Professor Vaidya was referring to. And all plans, given the dynamic nature of reality, urban reality for sure, all plans need to be quite frequently reviewed and replanned. So this point about, she was mentioning 20-year plan, and then you don't know what to do in between, is a problem, because even at the city level, large or medium-sized city level, the wards and the localities require more local planning after the grand plan is made. So, you can make national plans and big metro plans, but decentralized capacity and decentralized incentives for planning have to be introduced. And I think that the professional education that we are imparting can contribute to that. So both by, if all students in planning and architecture and related disciplines did some field work as part of their education, think of enormous granular knowledge that will emerge from this all around our country. And in some ways, the new education policy at least blesses this. It blesses three things which are relevant to our conversation. It blesses engaged teaching. It is asking for taking students into the real world for teaching. And second, it blesses his multidisciplinarity. It is asking, all this business of credit mobility and all these big ideas that are there can be taken advantage of by institutions if they want, because the framework of the policy is now national policy. The third thing it does is it's asking students to do actionable research, academics to do actionable research, which produces knowledge for local action, for, municipality level action, ward level action. So not just grand research, but also actionable research locally. And one idea that is inherent in this new education policy, several places it has been articulated, is the idea that there are multiple types of knowledge systems, and that experiential knowledge in the world of practice is also valuable knowledge. And this is a point that Anshu was making, that if you treat them as beneficiaries, you don't listen to them, you then don't value what they bring. And we know from experience, not just in Murukku or in other places in the country as well, that we can develop a sense of ownership only when we value people's own knowledge as a starting point. They need to work with technically trained professionals as well, but you can't just be dismissive of that. The new education policy blesses this point. It repeats it several times. So there is space if we want to take this forward and build partnerships, as Barsha was saying, which are more durable and sustainable. I am hoping that many of you would start taking advantage of these opportunities for your students. And I can assure you that the most creative professionals are those who don't follow the written line. They innovate. What we call innovation means you challenge the given or received wisdom, and you link it to local reality to create innovations. So in the professional education in this field, it's not just planners and architects, but engineers and economists and investment banker types also need to come together. The function is more complex than just for single discipline to handle. I hope that the deliberations here can be captured in a way that they can also be taken forward. Professor Vaidya was talking about his experience of dealing with the curriculum, and we can involve all of you in taking that forward with the help of all of you, so that we can begin to engage AICTE, UGC, ITPI, and all those who are interested in this. As you know, Niti Aayog has recently set up a panel to review planning formats for urban habitation. And I think we can all contribute to that, not only from this consultation, but also from our own vantage points. So thank you all. I am going to thank you from me, all of you who contributed, who made important experiential and theoretical points. Thank you. And let me invite Dr. Minali Banerjee of MUJ to give a formal vote of thanks. Minali, we are in your hands.
A very good afternoon, everyone. I hope I'm audible.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. So, it has been an honor for me to get the opportunity to thank all the dignitaries. And since I'm not an urban planning person, or I'm an economics student, but still, because I have been researching in this area of community engagement and community-based research, so I could much relate with urban planning and resilience. And I'm quite interested to read some more research papers on it. And this has been my only question to all the Indian people who are working in terms of community engagement, that I find very less research is being made in terms of this, specifically in India. As a researcher of community engagement, I need to, just grab onto some researches that are from different countries and not from India, not specifically for our urban planning or for architecture, but for every stream, for social science, humanities, and all. So I hope we could have some more good researches and research output as a result of these webinars. So, well, on behalf of the MUJ Priya Hub, Manipal University, Jaipur, I extend a warm welcome to the people in the gathering. I would like to express my gratitude to all esteemed delegates of the webinar for their presence and contribution to make this webinar a success. I extend my gratitude to Professor Chetan Vaidya sir to take out time from his busy schedule to grace the event. I thank Ms. Sheila Patel ma'am and Dr. Anshu Sharma sir for inspiring and encouraging us with their words on this day. A special thanks to Dr. Barsha Purisha for providing immense support to make the webinar successful. A very, very special thanks to Dr. Rajesh Tandon sir for his wonderful words. I also extend my gratitude to Professor Madhura Yadav ma'am to organize a webinar even amidst the pandemic. I must thank the organizing committee as well, especially Mr. Vibhu sir and Dr. Manish Sharma sir, and of course, Kaustubh sir, Niharika and Nikita for working hard for the past few days to make this webinar successful. I congratulate all the participants for their active participation. Thank you everyone once again for your contribution. Keep learning and unlearning. Thank you.
Thank you all and stay well.
Yes, sir.